Welcome to Law Subscribed. This is your dedicated news source for all things subscriptions in the law. My name is Matthew Kurbis. I'm the subscription attorney, and I believe subscriptions can help bridge the access to justice gap and incentivize attorneys to modernize and scale their practice like never before. On this show, I interview lawyers ditching the billable hour and experts who can help attorneys move beyond billing time. Thanks to my sponsors, 650 and Gavel. Links to both in the show notes. More on them later, and use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED when signing up. You get 10% off, and it supports the show. The best way to support the show is to share it with someone you know. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing said is legal, ethical, or financial advice. Without further delay, here's the episode. I'm thrilled to have with me here today Eve Lumsden. Welcome to Law Subscribed.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm so happy to be here.
So we got connected because I reached out on LinkedIn saying I'm almost done filling slots for the 2024 season for the weekly Law Subscribed interview-based show. And you reached out, and you were one of two people who actually in the comments of that post, like, put it all out there to everyone else what you're doing that's
No shame.
innovative. Yeah, no, it's important. I think it's important because it inspires other attorneys. I get all the time in like the LinkedIn comment section on like trending posts like, oh, it can't be done, it'll never happen. And so to see that there's like, it's not just me, but there's other lawyers who are doing it, I think is inspirational. So thank you for doing that. And so I'm just learning about you. And like really today, like this is our first chance we've had to talk. So other than what you've posted, I don't know too much about you or your practice other than what's available online. So go ahead. It's time for you to tell my audience more about yourself.
All right. Thank you. Yes. And I'm going through a complete rebrand because I want everybody to know about me, about my services, and about these pricing policies that I have in place. So to your point, it is being done, and it's being done by a lot of people, right? So to start from the beginning, law is a second career for me. I was in hospitality for a long time. And I worked for some of the biggest hospitality chains, and they remind me a lot of big law firms that use the billable hour, right? So what happens is you get in, because I worked in hospitality group sales. I have this bubbly personality. I was good at it. So you get in on the ground floor, you start at the bottom, you have a low pay grade, you work really hard, and the harder you work, the more you move up the food chain, right? So I was working very hard. And there's almost a performance punishment part where you start to move up the food chain because you're doing so well, but the harder you work and the better you do, the more is it's expected of you. So, and much like big firms, hospitality, when I was in it, was still primarily a male-driven industry. So there's a detriment to females, people of color. We seem to have to work a little bit harder than everybody else. But so it was a race to the top, and there was always somebody above you, like a partner, telling you, okay, you got to do more, or what you did wasn't good enough, or here's how you have to change. And by the time that you really excel at your career, you live at the office, to the detriment of your family, to the detriment of your social life, and to the detriment of your health and your mental health. And so that was kind of where I got to. I did well. And by the time I became a director, I was one of the youngest female directors in the area. So, I felt like I had something to prove, and I proved it. But there was that performance punishment. And by the time I became a director, I had 2 kids at home. I was pregnant with my third. I had a wonderful husband who was picking up all of my slack with my family. And because I negotiated contracts, I worked closely with our legal team. And I always told the attorney that I worked with, I said, I'd much rather be doing what you're doing than doing what I'm doing. And so when I knew that I was going to go out on maternity leave with my third daughter, I was talking to the attorney on the phone one day, and we were doing the work but social conversation. And she said, well, I think you'd make a great attorney. And I said, I'm a little old to go back to law school. And she said, no, you're not. So she volunteered to write my law school entrance letter. And I went out on maternity leave, and I got accepted into law school. And with a baby and 2 young kids at home, I ended up going to law school. And it was a trip being an adult at law school with, primarily younger kids. I was that mom who had, medicine in my backpack, and I took care of everybody when they had the breakdowns. But it was a lot of fun. And I think I did it the right way because I actually got to appreciate law school. So I knew from my experience in hospitality that I never wanted to work in big law. My 1L a year, I got an internship at an estate planning firm here in Central Florida, and it was run by these two boss babes, female partners. They were killing it. And what I noticed right away in my interview was one of them had a playpen in her office for her toddler, and the other one left at the same time every day to go pick up her middle schooler and bring her back to the firm so she could hang out with mom and do her homework. People don't usually go to law school to become a lawyer for work-life balance, but that's exactly what I did. So from my very first impression of a law firm, I thought you can do this. You can blaze your own path. You can have a family and still have a successful firm. So I ended up interning with them, and it was a fantastic experience getting to learn about how to run a law firm. First and foremost, how to be an attorney when it was only my 1L year, how to be a successful attorney and a mom. And then I also learned all of these things about estate planning when I hadn't even taken estates and trusts in law school yet.
Mhm.
So I had such a great experience there, but having been a leader of people before, there were definitely some things that I saw that I thought I would do differently. So the longer I was there, the more I bonded with them. And then they ended up offering me a job to continue on after the internship. And then when I graduated, but after a while, the differences were very evident to me. And I think my endpoint came when I went to them and I said, "Hey guys, I have a full course load in school. And I do have a family that I don't want my family to suffer. I don't want my course load to suffer. So you got to stop putting so much work on me." And they said, "Well, we'll just give you a laptop and you can take the work home and do it in the middle of the night." And I went, "Thank you. Respectfully, I think it's time that we part ways." But I took so much great learning from that experience. And first and foremost, I learned that I was correct. I never wanted to be in big law. There was a better way to do things.
Mhm.
Also, that firm did exclusively flat fee pricing. And they had an entire suite of trust administration services, things that people typically charge, but attorneys charge by the hour for. And they were doing it all on a flat fee basis. And I was watching it be very successful. So that was my first introduction into pricing for these services was flat fee basis. So that's what I thought everybody was doing at the time.
Just
Then
like when other lawyers go out, they think, "Oh, billable hours, that's what everyone must be doing," and it is actually accurate.
exactly,
But yeah,
yeah.
whatever. It's I can't remember who said it, but it's like the first time you form an opinion about something that you didn't previously have an opinion on, it suddenly becomes strongly held. And I think that has to do something with growing up in the tribe and learning to, if you hear the tigers growling, run away, right? Like so it's
Yes.
like evolutionary, like we want to learn things without if we don't have an opinion about it before. But for you, your functional fixedness was a good thing.
It was. It
Mhm.
was. And it shaped my career because when I went looking for that next job, I knew I wanted a small firm. And I ended up going into a firm that handled primarily bankruptcy because I was very interested in that as a practice area as well. And they
Also,
this
historically flat fee.
Yes.
Mm.
So I went into this small firm. It was a solo, but he had one or two associate attorneys, depending on the time. And he had a couple of paralegals and one legal secretary, right? And I loved the environment because you could really mesh with your office and all become this unified unit. And so, but again, walking into a flat fee pricing structure that really was successful for him. At the time, bankruptcy filings were starting to decline. So he came to me one day and said, "Listen, we need to add a practice area in here, and you're good at estates and trusts. So let's add that in." Right. So we worked on some flat fee pricing for estates, and we got that off the ground. And that ended up being pretty successful for his firm. But because bankruptcies just kept declining and declining and declining, it after a while, it didn't make sense for me to stay on there financially. It just, I felt like I was more of a drain on this firm because they had to pay me. And so we parted ways, but it was very agreeable. It just financially, the economy just wasn't right. But I had an offer from another firm, which was based out of Colorado and needed a Florida attorney to handle their estate planning and probates. And again, all flat fee pricing. When I was doing my research on this firm, I looked on their website and all of their pricing was published. And this was different from my previous firms. Their philosophy was, what was it? It was democratizing the law. It was access to legal services at a reasonable rate for everybody, right? And that was their core philosophy. And I really jived with it. I thought, yes, you don't have to be an attorney charging $500, $700 an hour to provide great legal services. And especially here in Florida, it does tend to be hard. We have so many legal aid bodies that try to help individuals who need help with legal services because we just have so much competition and our pricing has just skyrocketed. So I loved this opportunity. I got to build my office out here. I'm located in Windermere, which is in the suburbs of Orlando. So I'm central Florida. But with estate planning and probate and how COVID really turned on and turned up the technology, I've practiced all over the state. I've done probates in, many, many counties, all the way from the Panhandle down to the Keys and everywhere in between. So being able to start building this practice here, I had some assistance from the back office back in Colorado, but this was really my own. And
Are you still doing any work with that firm?
I have one probate from that firm that I'm closing right now.
Mhm.
So they were great, when I came to them and said, "Hey, I love working with you, but I really want to be on my own," right? And they were so wonderful and understanding. And so they kept my channels open so that I could access all of the tools and resources that I needed to really be successful for these clients as I was winding everything up. So
And say the firm name so people know, because if a firm that's listing pricing on their website is a firm that we're all interested in on this podcast.
absolutely. So they're Lida Law Firm, and they have attorneys licensed in, gosh, I think they started out in 5 states, but they've grown tremendously. And so I know it's more than five. I can't tell you how many because I know that they just brought on another batch of attorneys in different states as well.
Well, I'll
But,
tell you what, I've been trying to get Mark Lyda on the podcast because of that. So it's great to hear that that was the firm that you worked at, and I saw that on your LinkedIn, and I thought, okay, this is going to be good. Maybe after the call, you'll have to help me try to convince Mark to come on the show to talk about what they're doing differently, how they're practicing law differently. So let me ask you then, did you ever bill by the hour ever?
so it's a funny story. When I was with Mark and Lida, there were a handful of matters and that were brought to me that Mark and I discussed, and we thought it would be better to do them as a billable hour. When I tell you that I was so confused the first time that I had to do a case by the billable hour because it was counterintuitive to everything I had done in my legal career up to that point. And just that the challenges of it were glaring to me right away. You always hear stories about how attorneys don't bill accurately. They never bill for the amount of time that they actually worked on a matter. And I definitely find that to be true. But trying to track every email that I sent, every time I logged into a system, every, zero point 0.6 minutes, an hour, if you missed something because you weren't used to doing it, then the redundancy of having to go back and try to find the time and accurately record the time that you worked and the time spent doing that was redundant, it was wasteful. And so I can easily see why attorneys do not charge for all the hours that they work because it is a waste of time to try to figure those hours out, right? And why with what, especially estate planning and probate, everything that we do marries with every other thing that we do, where we document every plan, every piece of the asset protection, it all speaks to each other. So why shouldn't we be able to figure out a reasonable flat fee pricing structure for these services? It's an hourly bill is not required. I know what a probate entails, right?
Mhm.
So there's a way for me to be able to do a great intake with a client, figure out what is required of me, and make a fair representation of this whole package pricing for that client.
Right.
So, yeah, so the billable hours threw me, and I did 2, maybe 3. And I went to Mark and said, "I don't wanna do billables anymore. This is you can clearly see I'm not great in the system at these. You don't want me doing billables. Let's go back to flats." So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So then really when you were getting started, it was sort of a no-brainer that you were gonna have a firm that was not gonna be charging by the hour.
I took everything I had learned from those 3 fantastic firms. I took everything that I would do the same and everything that I would do differently, and I just did it all when I started my firm.
So I don't want to hide the ball too much longer, but you did post about this on the LinkedIn thing, and that is that you're a flat fee firm, but you have a subscription offering. And this tends to be the thing that seems to be working with estate planning attorneys, because now you're like the third or the fourth attorney who's done estate planning with some sort of subscription offering that I've had on the show. And it seems to be, and I'm curious to know how you do it. And that seems to be because there's like, there's an end thing. So it's like this estate plan is going to be done at some point. Now, as a estate planning attorney since the get-go, that there's always things that happen that you need to update your estate plan. So like what I've seen some monthly versions of subscription, like whenever something happens, you contact me, we update it. And I've seen now the annual check-in, like it's an annual subscription. We check in once a year to see how things are doing. And so I've seen monthly and annual subscriptions. So tell me about what subscription offering you have and how you price it and why you've designed it that way.
Yep. So I started with an annual, but I think that my annual may qualify as a hybrid based on what you're describing, because my annual includes a certain amount of updates per year. So that 1 year you're paying up front. But once you pay that up front, if you have maybe your kids have all flown the nest, right? And so things need to be changed. You got married a second time, your plan needs to change. Your beneficiary passed away, any number of items can happen that are going to change your plan, and we're going to change it however many times you need to within that year. So that is one of the services that we provide.
So
And
that
then there
that sounds to me like an all-you-could-eat premium subscription add-on. Is that what that is essentially?
so it's actually not an add-on, it's part of the subscription.
Okay.
Because what's happening is I'm creating your plan, but plans are fluid. Everybody's circumstances change all the time. Mine change all the time. So my plan changes with me. So I don't want the clients that I've created plans for, I don't want their plan to be static, because then it is not an accurate representation of their needs. It's not protecting them adequately. So what I want to do is offer within my package pricing and within my subscription plan items that are really going to be of value to them. And that means updating the trust or amending the trust or giving you a new will, or, I'm not going to do anything that is going to devalue my services. Of course, the pricing has to be commensurate with the services offered, because I want people to take me up on the offerings. I do have some things in there that are pretty standard. You can have first access to my seminars and things of that nature. To me, those are the filler. The real meat and potato of the plan is, how do I make sure that you are taken care of when your life circumstances change? And so those also include, a certain amount of hours that you can call in and have those talks with me, and I can give you guidance on your plan, right? And tell you whether or not we really need to change it at that time. I'm not going to charge you for phone calls. And I realistically, do I really charge my existing clients for when they call and talk to me anyway? I am a hospitality driven, relationship driven attorney. So I'm not out here to try to tell you that if you call me, you have to pay $300 an hour to talk to me. That's not what I'm going to do.
Although if you cap it at so many hours, even though you're not billing time, you still have to track time. So what I do, and tell me what you think about this, and what I always encourage lawyers do, whether they're billing time or not, this just is just like it's a make sense type thing, and it's exactly what you're doing. It's just reframing it a little bit, and that is you can schedule up to an X amount of minutes of a call time with me, and I don't cap it. That's part of my subscription benefit, right? And you could also have different, you could have here are 6 unique one-click Calendly links. You could use them whenever you want, but you only get these 6. So that's a way you could do it. So you're not actually tracking
Mhm.
the time. You're using 6 unique links that can only be used once, right? Here you go. This is what you get as
Yeah.
part of your subscription package. And you could cap each call at an hour or 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And you're the lawyer, and you could always give them more time. Like here's another 15-minute one because we weren't able to finish that other call, and I don't want you using that next hour one, right? So like you could be
Right.
lets you be magnanimous. You're still controlling your time, which is important, which I think is what you're trying to do when you're saying they get so many hours of scheduled calls of calls with me. But then this way you don't need to track it. And if they don't use the full hour, they used that link. And you were able to
Yes.
resolve it in less time. Now you got that time back to go market, do more work, whatever, right? So like that's how I would reframe that. Are you open to that kind of a thing? What do you think?
I'm absolutely open to that because right now I am tracking and,
Boo-hoo. Yeah.
right?
Don't track. No tracking.
Yeah, and I do that not just for me, but out of fairness to them, because to your point, if we're able to resolve something in 35 minutes that they thought was going to take an hour, well, that's 25 minutes that I promised them that they haven't used yet. And I want to make sure that they know that I'm available to them for those 25 minutes. It could be a totally different issue. But I like that because I am I'm always looking for ways to refine those processes,
Mhm.
right? And spend a little less time in the system and a little more time doing the things that are really important.
When I went solo, I pivoted from mostly litigation to a transactional only practice. I did not have a database of documents to automate. That's why a business and employment legal document database and automation tool like 650 is super useful. I can rely on the quality of the documents in 650's database since they're putting excellent legal minds to work curating and updating their documents and automations over time. When you're not billing by the hour, outsourcing and efficiency matters, and 650 can help you scale your practice to get high quality documents drafted in less time. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at 650.com and when being onboarded to get 10% off. If you're not a business and employment attorney or you have your own documents that you'd prefer to use, then my next sponsor, Gavel, is the automation tool for you. Gavel allows you to build shareable, client-facing workflow and document automations. In other words, Gavel helps you create a legal practice where attorneys can monetize the value they bring clients in productized form and scale via subscriptions and flat fees. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at gavel.io to get 10% off an annual subscription. There's no one right way to automate and scale your practice, but with one or both of my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, you can take your subscription law firm to the next level. Links to both in the show notes. Now back to the show. So let that be known, everybody who's too afraid to come on the show because they're still new in their subscription model and they're not sure about things. You come on the podcast, you give some content for my audience, and you might get something valuable back in return. There you go.
Very valuable, and I appreciate it. I do, because that's one of my main goals, and that's why I'm going through the rebranding right now. When I opened, I just needed to get up and running.
Mhm.
And I had, services that I was putting on the site and spending a lot of time, again, out in the community and out there networking. And now I'm refining. And I want to make this as streamlined of a process as possible for exactly that reason, because there are value propositions out there that will mean more to me and more to the client than me sitting in front of a computer and tracking time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're talking about rebranding. I do see that you went with your name is the law firm. So, here we talk a lot about how having a powerful brand that's separate from your actual name helps you, create a valuable asset as a firm owner that you could sell in the future. And, you'll always have your personal brand. Like I'm Matthew Kurbis, I'm the subscription attorney, right? Like that's like my personal brand. But Subscription Attorney LLC, that's the law firm. That's a different thing, right? And so that's how I've tackled it. And by the way, that's not necessarily a great brand. I love that it's broad. But if you're just an estate planning attorney, you could have a brand name that is like targeted at I mean, I've seen here in the North Shore of Chicago, I think there's like a North Shore Estate Planning is like the name of a law firm.
Mhm.
And can you believe nobody had that before? So, like even something that's generic, which I don't know if you get a trademark on. I'm not an IP attorney, but like that is more powerful than like your name. So is that part of the rebrand or like, what are you thinking there?
Yeah, so I have short-term planning and long-term planning. And the short-term planning for the rebrand still includes my name in the firm name, just because that is how I've started. I've been in the Central Florida area for so long, and I know so many people and strangely enough, there are a handful of people with my last name, but not a lot. So it's recognizable. What I really want to do is build the firm to the point that I want to stop, right? I have some growth. I don't want to be a multi-attorney practice. My goal is to have a strong paralegal legal secretary team behind me for that administrative help. And I'm working on hiring right now, but it is, I think, a longer process for me than some others because I have some standards with my hospitality background that I really want to make sure
Mm.
mesh with the firm before I bring anybody on. But the short term goal is to make my name and keep my name recognizable. And then the 5-year plan with the company that is handling all of my marketing and my website and everything is to, once I have that huge subscriber base, I'm a law subscribed, right? I'm on your level. I've got all of those followers and all of that content out there. Then in 5 years, maybe a little bit less, is to find that right fit over here. Because if you go on and search, Orlando estate planners, Central Florida estates and probate, all right, there's so many of those here too. What is that magical middle ground where it's not the name, but it stands out
How
from?
about something like Evergreen Estate Planning Florida or something like that, right? Because the way that you described your subscription package to me and the way that you philosophically think about estate plans is like you don't want something static. Well, what's the opposite of static, right? Maybe evergreen's not the word for that, but I'm thinking like opposite of static, something like some word that encapsulates that. Maybe you throw estate planning in there too, because that's what you do. We're a forever estate planning firm. And maybe there's even something that you could find like the acronym is like a 3-letter acronym, like something
Right.
like EP, right? Like
Mhm.
come up with like a nice acronym there, by Eve Lumsden, right? Esquire
Yeah.
or whatever, right? If you want to keep your name in there. So I feel like there's something there. Think about
Yes.
that. And these episodes don't go live for like I'm at like 3 to 4 months out now at least. So you'll have plenty of time before this goes. And I could chop this part out if you decide to use Evergreen. You let me know. Although EEP, I don't know. I don't know how that sounds. Eep, eep. I don't
Yeah.
know what to
I'm
do with
I'm
my
not sure about
estate
that either.
plan. Right? They're like, I mean, the marketing writes itself. It's a little dad jokey. I have a 3-year-old. I'm allowed to have dad jokes. But eep,
Yes.
what do I do? Go
I
to
appreciate a
Evergreen
good
Estate
dad joke.
Planning.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I definitely, and it's interesting. So I opened very quickly, and then immediately after opening, I encountered both of my parents fell ill at the same time, and they were hospitalized at the same time. So luckily, I was fortunate enough to be open for less than a month, and then 90 days I was basically caring for my elderly parents and trying to see if they were going to make it. And I was working nights and I was working weekends. Anytime I wasn't at the hospitals or the facilities, I was getting the firm up and running. And then that was, after all of that settled, that was when I came back and I was able to really focus and get the nuts and the bolts of the firm working. And that was when I said, okay, now we got to start working on the branding, the name recognition, the getting out there into the community. Again, very fortunate because I've been here for so long. Has not been a downtime with my firm, and I'm very happy about that. But I need the community to see my package pricing, my flat fee pricing, my offerings, right? I need to just get it out there is the focus now because it is being done. I don't want to charge hourly. There are a ton of Orlando attorneys who charge hourly for estate planning and probate. I want to differentiate myself, and these subscription prices, these package prices, these flat fee prices, I want to make it known that this is normalized and this is what clients should be looking for when they're looking for an attorney.
Right, right. And then depending on what market you want to target, you could just offer flat fees for just the simple estate or whatever estate plan that you want to offer, and whether they sign up for the maintenance package or not, or whatever you call it, that's up to them. Or what you could do, and so few lawyers do this, like the only ones that I know that like absolutely require subscriptions in this kind of a way are the counsel for creators guys, right? Because they're like, okay, like you want legal services from our firm, sign up to be a member for $100 a month or $99 a month or whatever it is, right? And there are pure subscription attorneys out there. I've had them on the podcast, but they don't think about the membership model that way like I do, which is like you have to subscribe even at $20 a month to even get any legal services. Now, what you could do is you could have a bifurcated approach, though it's been advised by some guests that this is difficult to manage two different business models in one. And that is, you could pay, whatever, $3,000 for this estate plan, Or if you become a member, a subscriber of the firm for whatever, $99 a month or whatever it is, you get, these other benefits that you could edit and update your plan whenever you want. And instead of $3,000, it's $2,750. You have a $250 savings, right? And you could try like an A/B test of like, here, do you want just the flat fee pricing with this potential to subscribe? Or do you want to subscribe right away and get a better deal on everything? And what the Council for Creators guys do, which I still haven't seen anybody else really do this, or maybe I've just forgotten, is they wait to give the discount until somebody's been subscribed for like at least 3 months. And I don't necessarily know how you
Interesting.
would do that for an estate planning attorney, but there might be some way to be like, if you have other flat fee offerings, it's like
Mhm.
you get an additional discount on those after you've been subscribed for a certain amount of time to ethically like incentivize, like the people, the clients to stay subscribed. You have to be providing value and all that. But that's one of the ways that they do it. And I don't really see a lot of other people doing that. So does that gel with anything that you're currently thinking about in terms of the rebrand and the remarketing?
I hadn't thought about anything like that. And it's interesting, but it brings up questions. So my presumption would be that the content for creator guys, they provide the discount later because there's some risk involved with providing a discount up front and then having the subscribers immediately go and unsubscribe, right?
Right.
So,
I think that yes, and the idea is just like with any subscription, right? And this is why, like you said, you hire a marketing company. Like they often require a certain amount of months minimum in a contract. Recently, an episode went live, although it'll been it was several months from when this episode goes live with Augmentor, and they just require 60 days with a VA because it takes
okay.
60 days to really understand the benefits of having a VA in the same way that it takes, and they use subscription for their VAs. And so, like, if you join the Council for Creators membership, in their experience, once you've been involved for 3 months and you've gotten 3 months of the subscriber benefits that you get,
Mhm.
then okay, yeah, I'm getting a lot of value from this for just $99 a month. I'm going to stick around. And so I think that's the reason why. It's nothing to do with like shady business tactics. It has to do with like there's a lot of value here. It's going to take you 3 months to appreciate that value and extract that value. And so once we know you get it, now we're going to offer you this additional discount. And they could still get the other flat fee services that they offer, but that's their only subscription. Like the rest is flat fee. So they also are doing it
Okay.
very differently than I'm doing it. And some of these other subscription attorneys are doing it because they're
Right.
using pure subscription for everything, like I'm doing for my fractional in-house work or fractional general counsel work. So, like there's no one right way to do it. And so that's what I love having somebody who's still early in the journey on the podcast because we could workshop this. We could talk about it.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting because I have not come across anybody who's doing it that way yet. So, lot to think about for sure.
Yeah. Not to give you more work to do, Eve, you know. It'll be worth it.
I like to
It'll be
work.
worth it. Yeah, yeah, I think
Yeah.
it'll be worth it. So something I want to touch on because, time has flown, is that you talked about having a sales background, and yet you're still using
Mhm.
like a marketing company, right? And a lot of lawyers, they think, oh, well, they just lump sales together as business development, marketing, closing, client intake. But like it's all of these separate things, right? So even somebody with a sales background like yourself, maybe that makes you really good at the close, but you're still outsourcing the marketing, right? So why even make that decision to do something like that?
Experience. Um, I what I saw from my previous firms is there was a lot of investment in software. So like CRM software. A lot of these firms had the top of the line, the most expensive software, but it was a waste of money because being smaller, they weren't utilizing most of the features that the software was capable of. It was that they liked one aspect of the software, right? So they went with that, but left money on the table. But then they would try to save money by doing their own marketing and doing their own branding. But then what I heard consistently over and over is we need more leads, we need more clients, we need more, intakes, right? So for me, I have this fantastic company here that I had worked with previously on a different business venture. And they recently started doing all-in-one marketing and branding, right? So they will create your website and then they'll host it. They do what you were mentioning earlier with scheduling your social media, podcasting, interviewing and putting it up on your YouTube channel and your newsletter, all of those things, right? And just they're really great at what they do. So I looked at all of these attorneys who were wasting money on things that they weren't really using, but trying to save money on things that would actually get them the end result that they wanted. And I said, all right, I'm gonna flip it. So that was my decision. Once I have software that works very well for my firm, and I spent a lot of time when I first started getting to know the ins and outs of that software so that I could use it the best way that it was practical for my firm and not have any waste there. The money I saved by doing this is the money that I invested in the marketing. And because that's not my strength. Sales, yes, I can close a deal all day long. I can get out and network in a room full of people and tell you everything about everybody I talk to by the end of the day. But am I great at social media? I don't think I'm as good as I could be. And there are people out there who can take what I know and my message and they can make it impactful to other people. So I wanted to make sure that I was utilizing my resources correctly. And I feel like I've done that. So that's been my split between, where I'm spending my time and my money for the firm, based
That's a
upon what I saw before.
I think that that's a massive takeaway for this interview for the listeners because we just don't hear that. And it sounds like it's working for you, which is really good to hear. We are the experts in legal, so we're going to do like don't go on whatever website and get your own estate plan because it's not going to be as good if you do it yourself. Well, lawyers, we love to do things ourselves, except we tell all our clients, don't do that. Don't do your own estate planning. Come to me to do the estate planning or whatever it
Right.
is. So don't do your own marketing, right? If you could afford it, if you got the resources, outsource that stuff is the takeaway because getting the client pipeline, like that's super. You could have the best technology, you could have the best business model. You could have workshopped it for months or years. But if you can't get the clients, I mean, none of it
Right.
matters, right?
What's the point of sitting on all of your internal processes and procedures if you don't have a client to utilize them on?
Right. Right, exactly. But you did mention technology, and I do want to know to the extent that you are, leveraging tech, like what tech are you using? And also as it relates to like payment processing and stuff, because we love payment stuff on Law Subscription.
Yep. So I'm very basic. So I use MyCase
Hmm.
and I use LawPay.
Yep.
And those two things, they work tremendously well for a solo attorney, right? And again, you have to dig in when you get them. You have to not be afraid to blow up your account representative. You have to watch all the videos and tutorials. You have to test it a million times. But once you do that and you understand how to make it work for you, it works. It's great. So those things bring value to me to enable me to focus my energy and my goals, marketing in other areas.
Yeah. Um, Another thing I want to talk about with you is this like access to justice angle, right? Or latent legal market. Like I prefer latent legal market. The lawyers coalesce around this access to justice thing. But something I spoke about with, and it should be live at the time that this goes live, is something I talked about with Natalie Knowlton of Access to Justice Ventures. Is she considers what I'm about to say an upstream access to justice problem, and that is like the latent legal market of people who don't actually have legal problems yet. So like they don't need access to justice. And that's kind of where estate planning is, right? Because it's like you don't like it's the most obvious example of problem avoidance. Like let's get your estate plan together so you don't have problems in the future. So I feel like it fits really well there. Now, a lot of estate planning lawyers still target high net worth individuals, and they have a lot more needs. But me personally, I have a $400 offering to my subscribers for a super simple estate plan. And it doesn't take very long. It's mostly automated. These are people who would never, like, I'm not competing with other estate planning lawyers because these clients would never hire them, Like, so are you targeting any latent legal market clients? Or are you focusing on, like, the high net worth individuals?
I'm not focusing on the high net worth individuals for exactly, what you just described is listen, I am a suburban mom with a loop of individuals on my street who are all in the same boat, right? We all have kids. some of them younger, some of them a little bit older. We're not the rich folks that live, the 3 blocks over. Those people have a team of attorneys that work on their estate plan for them. But my next door neighbors have assets, and if they're not protected, they don't realize what's going to happen to those assets if something happens to them, and primarily what's going to happen to their kids. The people who really have the need are the ones that I want to be talking to. I want to talk to the clients who, again, they've heard of estate planning, maybe don't really understand what it is and don't understand what the need for it is. But they do know that if there was a simultaneous car crash, they've got young children, and they might not want to think about what would happen, but they need to. Those are my target clients. Those are the people who really have a need for what I do. So I don't necessarily do the most basic estate plans, but I don't want to target the ultra rich. I'm happy doing estate planning for those individuals who have a need but don't know that they have a need. And that's where me being out in the community, that's where my sales background, that's where the networking comes in. Because you can drop those conversations just about anywhere. And even if those clients don't book with me, I still want them to get protection somewhere. And I want them to start thinking about that, right? Plant that seed so that if they say, okay, it's not in the budget right now, but we should budget for this 6 months from now, they start putting those plans in place.
Right. Right. Moving on to another question, because we're wrapping up the interview here at this point, although I feel like we're going to have you back in like 6 months for like a check-in. So we already sort of touched on this, but I think it's important to talk about. And that is, longtime listeners know most of the attorneys who are innovating in the business model space for law firms are women attorneys of color. Big law doesn't work for them. You already kind of talked about that, but your first exposure was not to any of that when you actually started working at law firms, and that was two women who owned and started a law firm, right? So prime example of they're not doing it the way that white male lawyers have been doing it forever, or for 50 plus years. So my question for you is, Eve, is why do you think that is?
Why do I think that women and people of color are the innovators?
Yes.
For me, that's a no-brainer, right? You think about my journey as a mom. I have had to, in order to be successful in any career, I've had to be a problem solver. I've had to look at, working in that white male dominated industry of hospitality. I had to figure out, okay, if I'm here and I want to get here, or if I have this level of success, but I really want to achieve that level of success, how do I do this while still being a good mom and a good wife and still being able to accomplish, see my friends and just have work-life balance? It's like a Jenga game, and you're constantly taking one piece of the puzzle and figuring it out and then putting it away so that you could take a second piece of the puzzle. There are just more challenges, more is expected of us. But the more that is expected of us and the more that we have to figure out, the more powerful we become.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you're a woman, whether you're a person of color, or whether you're both, you face those challenges, you face those puzzles constantly on a daily basis, whether you even know that you're facing them or not, right? So you succeed, and the more you succeed, the smarter, the more powerful, the more capable you become, and then you just want to keep doing more.
Well, that's great. I don't think we're gonna top that for the rest of this interview. So we'll wrap up even a touch early with my question I'd like to ask all my guests, what keeps my listeners around to the end of the show, and that is, Eve, is a hot dog a sandwich, and why?
No, a hot dog is a hot dog. Because I don't think a sandwich has to be 2 slices of bread with some filler in between. And I think that a sandwich can be a number of different items, but a hot dog has always been a hot dog. It is one piece of a bun, right? They're typically connected, but what's in between the folds of that bun is, you can't compare it to anything else. A hot dog is a hot dog is a hot dog, but a sandwich can be anything.
All right, good. So if anybody wanted to follow up with you or get in touch, what's the best way for them to do that?
on my brand new website, www.lumsdenlawfirm.com.
All right. And all right, Eve, thanks so much for coming on Law Subscribed.
Thank you for having me.
And that's our show. Thanks again to 650 and Gavel for being sponsors. The best way for others to discover this show is for you to share it with somebody you think would find value from it. Follow me on LinkedIn, since that's where I'm most active on social media, and click the bell towards the top right of my profile to get notified about all of my posts about this podcast and everything else I think is valuable for you to see. To get in touch, message me on LinkedIn or email kurbis@lawsubscribed.com. All links are in the show notes. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.